If justice is supposed to be blind, I have a question that I would like to ask all legal practitioners in Switzerland. Why is it necessary that when an Auslander, a foreigner, is up against a company in Switzerland, why is it necessary for the court to, you know, that section that you say John versus this company? Why does John's place of birth has to be beside his or her name? Why is that necessary? Just like on YouTube, to give your brain some new food. Hello people, and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time on the channel, a special welcome to you. I ask that you check out the rest of my videos. If you like what you see, give them a thumbs up, leave a comment, but more than anything, I'm asking that you subscribe to the channel. Today's video is a little different than my norm. Today's video, I'm actually addressing legal issues at home, at my adapted home. I very rarely touch videos or topics that are based in Switzerland, but when I get a chance, I'm always happy to address the situations in Switzerland, my current affairs, and so on and so forth. This video is actually challenging legal decisions, legal judgment that was recently made by, it's not fair to say two courts, but considering that it was appealed, I would have to say it was two courts. This is a civil situation, so nothing of major stakes is here, but considering that I'm passionate about law, I'm passionate about the axis that law rotates on and the languages of law in every country around the world, especially the ones that I reside in, I decided to do this video to also educate my viewers and my subscribers. But more than anything, I also wanted to do this video to attract the legal minds of Switzerland or the legal minds around the world. Because after all, law in general is pretty much the same worldwide in democratic countries, I would say, in countries that allow freedom of citizens to exercise the law. So generally speaking, law is usually the same in most countries with their own little deviations of it. So first and foremost, in most countries, in all countries around the world, I would have to say the number one rule, especially what I learned when I was studying law, was ignorance to the law is no excuse. And secondly, justice is blind. Lady Justice with the blindfold. So that's an indication to say justice is blind. If justice is blind, it's also insinuating that justice is also fair. So I'm about to challenge two judgments that was against me personally in Switzerland. And the reason why I want to challenge these two judgments is because I want to attract the opinion of people who understand law and who sits in a legal capacity. Because considering that I'm so passionate about law, I adhere to rules and regulations. I adhere to laws, written laws. I love it. If you are familiar with my channel, you will know that I'm someone that always promote legal standings. I promote anything that's within the guidance of law. Without law, there will just be chaos in every society. Again, this is a civil matter, petty civil matter. The amount is no more than 400 Swiss francs. Switzerland is a very expensive country. So when you refer to 400 Swiss francs, for most people, they'll let you know that that's just lunch for me and another person. If you go to Zurich and you're actually having a decent lunch, you can spend 400 Swiss francs just like that. So it's not the financial side that I'm arguing, but the legal side that I'm arguing. A win is a win. And if you guys don't know, I am a legal consultant in Switzerland, and when a court rule against my argument, I do take it a bit personal because everybody wants a squeaky clean track record. And if I'm consulting other people about law, I want to show people that I know what I'm doing, and I stay within the law. I stay within the written law. If justice is supposed to be blind, I have a question that I would like to ask all legal practitioners in Switzerland. Why is it necessary that when an Auslander, a foreigner, is up against a company in Switzerland, why is it necessary for the court to, you know, that section that you say John versus this company? Why does John's place of birth has to be beside his or her name? Why is that necessary? Let's not forget that prejudice is alive. Let's not forget that racism is real. Let's not forget that bias is real. So my question is, why is it necessary for the foreigner's nationality to be placed by his or her name, while the company you're up against, there's no nationality there? I ask this question for the simple fact that if one's nationality is there, it gives the court and the judge a preconception of who they are dealing with, and that could influence bias. That's my personal legal opinion. Anyway, let's get on to the nitty-gritty of this particular case. So this case involves a parking space. In Switzerland, you have to pay for parking space. They're usually anywhere from 90 francs per month to 150 per month. The one that I acquired in 2019 was 115 plus tax. So in the end, I had to pay like 120 per month. And that was cool with me. I signed the contract, and this is where the case gets highlighted, the signing of the contract. So upon signing of the contract reads as follows. The lease begins on May 1st, 2019 and lasts until April 30th, 2020. That is the minimum duration of the contract. The lease continued to read in the same section that if the termination is not made, the tenancy will continue indefinitely. If you do not terminate the contract within the minimum scope, which is the year, then the contract is deemed a permanent contract. You don't have to sign a new contract. You don't have to contact the landlord or anything. If it's not terminated, it continues on as if it's a forever contract. And the last thing that the contract says, notice period, 3 months to the end of each month except December 31st. That is pretty clear cut. In Switzerland, if you rent anything, a house, an office space, as long as the contract becomes a permanent contract, you have to give 3 months notice. As clear as that is, there's also a law that oversees those 3 stipulated rules of a rental contract. And the law here in Switzerland is Article 266. Article 266 reads, where the parties have expressly or tacitly agreed to a limited duration, the lease comes to an end on expiry, therefore without any need for notice to be given. What that means is what it says. If there is a minimum period to a contract, it means that you could actually use the minimum period without giving any notice. So, like the first part of the contract says, there's a minimum period. And the second part of the contract says, if you have not terminated the contract, then it's considered a permanent contract. The law pretty much reflects on the same. But the law highlights the powers of the first 12 months in this particular case. So in this particular case, the minimum period was 12 months. So you do not have to give a notice because the contract specifies a minimum period. The law continues to say, if the lease tacitly continues, the duration becomes indefinite. That is clear cut. So I want you guys to follow me, and I want you guys to correct me if somehow there's a misinterpretation in my part. So, for one, the contract has a minimum period from May 1st, 2019 to April 30th, 2020. That's the minimum period. And that is also the minimum period that the law speaks of. In layman terms, if you stay over April 30th, it becomes a permanent contract. The law says that, and the contract says that. In this particular case, I ended the contract on the very last day. I used up the whole minimum 1 year. Technically, 1 or 2 days before I left, but I owned the fact that I used up the 1 year. After the 1 year, I returned the keys to the landlord, and that's when this case became problematic, because the landlord says, according to the contract, I am obligated to give 3 months notice. Therefore, I owe 3 months rent. I disagreed and I objected. And because of that, this matter went to court. Interestingly, after the matter went to court, my defense was very simple. My defense was Article 266 of the Obligatory Rent here in Switzerland, the OR, the obligation rights. Interestingly, I did give a notice. I did it out of courtesy, just to say, well, here's the keys. I'm no longer a tenant here after this date. The first court, the lower court here in Zurich, came to a judgment in favor of the person that was suing me for 371. And the argument of the judge was simply, the person says, you owe 3 months, so you should pay for 3 months. That would be fair if I didn't have a legal contest, if I didn't have a challenge to that argument. That would be a very fair judgment. But my argument was Article 266, which says if there is a minimum period agreed on the contract and the minimum period is satisfied and not overrun, then no notice is required. Therefore, the person, me, could not owe 3 months rent. Interestingly, in the judgment of the lower courts, my defense was obsolete. It was not mentioned. It was as if me, the defendant, the Jamaican, did not have any objection or any say. Again, if that was a fact, I agree with the judge's judgment. But the fact is, I did have an objection, which was not mentioned in the judge's judgment. So I did what most people would have done in a situation like that. I appealed it. And it went to the High Court in Zurich. And the appeal court ruled in favor of the lower court. Let me give the appeal court some credit here. So, the credit that I'm going to give the appeals court is that the appeal court says, in an appellate procedure, you cannot use the argument as a continuation of the last court's decision. You have to find legal flaws that was wrong with the last court's decision. That put me between a rock and a hard place because, like I said, my argument of Article 266 was not mentioned in the lower court's judgment. Therefore, if I should bring up Article 266 now with the higher court, they're seeing it as if I'm trying to continue the argument from the lower court. So in my opinion, the lower court's judge passed a fast one by ignoring my argument and not putting it in her or his judgment. The next thing that the higher court ruled, that was more in my favor, because the lower court ruled that I was supposed to pay the 370 plus francs for the 3 months, and I'm supposed to pay court costs. That's not a problem. The loser in any civil case usually pays the court costs. Furthermore, the lower court was awarding this person 60 francs as compensation. The higher court knocked the compensation ruling out of the box. They disagreed with the compensation. They believe I should pay the 370 plus the court costs, plus their court costs. So again, I did this video because I want legal minds to share their opinion. But at the same time, you don't have to be a lawyer or a practitioner of law to understand this case. It's a civil case. Rules are set in stones. And if you abide by rules, then you usually win. In this case, I believe that I followed the rules, but for some reason, the courts, can't say the high court, the lower court, interpreted wrong. As a practitioner of law, I have a philosophy that you can never lose in law if you're passionate about law. And what I mean by that is, if you lose a case, there's usually a reason why you lose a case. And you usually can learn from the reason because the court usually outline the reasons why they're going against you. So if I lose the case by judgment, I usually gain knowledge. But in this case, I've lost the case and I've gained no knowledge. So I'm none the wiser as to how or why I lost this case, because the judge in this matter did not quote a law to says, well, you're losing this case because you did this wrong, or you did that wrong, or you did this wrong. The high court says, listen, you did one thing wrong here. You are introducing a new law to us in a manner to continue the case. And in the principle of law, you cannot do that. So there I learned something. But from the lower court judgment, the higher court has no other position than to agree with the lower court's position because they have nothing else to work with. My job is to find flaws, and my only real argument here is to say my argument of Article 266 was exempt. It is not enough for an appellate argument. Again, I could take this to a higher court. I could now take it to a federal court. Don't laugh. I have better things to do with my time because we're discussing 370 something francs with court costs. So in total, we're discussing about 500, 600 francs. It's not a lot of money to Swiss standards, but in respect of the law, it's serious. Outside of the law, it's laughable. It's 600 francs. So again, it's not really the money while I pursue it. It's not that I don't want to pay this because I don't have it. It was one of those situations. It was a principle of law. I would like to understand how law works in Switzerland, and I would like to understand how much the court respects the laws that are written. I must say in this particular case, the judge of the lower court was biased. The judge of the lower court, by exempting my defense argument of Article 266, showed prejudice. Should I take it to the federal court? Well, I got 30 days to decide. I've already decided not to. But if you guys hit me up within 30 days and tell me what you think, then I may or may not. However, again, this video is for educational purposes where I'm telling you guys what happened, and I expect you guys to also give some logical feedback. Maybe you guys could educate me in something, especially those of you who are of legal understanding. So that's pretty much it, people. This video is not monetized. I do not intend to monetize any of my future videos because of what I've said in my last two videos. So I hope you guys enjoy this video just as much as I enjoy doing it for you for free, ad-free. As you know on my channel, I appreciate thumbs up and thumbs down, agreement and disagreement, because at the end of the day, people, Each one teach one. You've reached the end of my video, and that in itself is a support that I truly appreciate. Other ways that you can support this channel is by giving this video a thumbs up. But the most important way to support my channel is to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss out on any of my future uploads. The third way to support this channel is to go to my Teespring account and purchase in any of my merch. And the fourth way that you can support this channel is joining me in Patreon to give me a contribution to help me to do what I do here in YouTube. Once again, I want to thank all of you guys for checking out my video and ask that you continue to join me, ENT Sabas, here on YouTube to see where my journey takes me. Until next time, peace.